For the 44th year, they came by the tens of thousands.
Thank you, Mr. President.
But this year, there's renewed hope.
For 44 years, every January, the March for Life has made its way up Constitution Avenue here to the Supreme Court building in hopes of overturning Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court decision which legalized abortion in this country. But this year, perhaps for the first time, among marchers there is a palpable optimism that it may really happen.
Life is winning again in America.
Vice President Mike Pence today became the highest-ranking public official to attend the March for Life. His pro-life credentials unassailable. As a congressman, he introduced the first bill to block federal funding of Planned Parenthood. As Indiana governor, he earned a 100% approval rating from the National Right to Life Committee. Also speaking from the White House inner sanctum, Kellyanne Conway, a longtime March attendee, the one who now wields real power.
Allow me to make it very clear. We hear you. We see you. We respect you, and we look forward to working with you.
Their combined support for the march was reinforced by this tweet from the president, quote, "The March for Life is so important. To all of you marching, you have my full support." Congress's greatest potential role in limiting abortion and in potentially overturning Roe v. Wade will come in confirmation hearings for a new Supreme Court nominee.
Next week, President Donald Trump will announce a Supreme Court nominee who will uphold the God-given liberties enshrined in our Constitution in the tradition of the late and great Justice Antonin Scalia.
In an interview Friday, the president said evangelical Christians will approve of the choice.
I think that the person that I pick will be a big, I think people are going to love it. I think evangelicals, Christians will love my pick and will be represented very, very fairly.
Chili's restaurant has canceled a Planned Parenthood fundraiser that was being held at locations across 2 states after pro-life supporters complained. The food chain was coming under fire for giving 15% of patrons' meal purchases to the abortion business. Earlier this week, Planned Parenthood in Indiana and Kentucky posted a promotional code for supporters to request that Chili's give 15% of their purchase to help the abortion company. Planned Parenthood of Indiana and Kentucky also posted a voucher for people to donate to their organization. That post has since been deleted, and Chili's has dropped that fundraiser.
President Donald Trump is renewing one of America's oldest relationships. The president pledged everlasting friendship for Great Britain after his meeting with Prime Minister Theresa May at the White House.
It's a great honor to have Winston Churchill back.
Bookending the just-returned Churchill bust in the Oval Office, President Trump and British Prime Minister Theresa May appeared eager to forge a close relationship and further strengthen the long-standing special ties between nations.
We have one of the great bonds. We pledge our lasting support to this most special relationship. Together, America and the United Kingdom are a beacon for prosperity and the rule of law.
With the Brexit looming in just 2 years, Britain needs a good friend and a strong bilateral trade relationship with the U.S. President Trump, who was in Scotland the day of the Brexit vote, has praised Brits for exercising their desire for self-determination, which he likened to his own election victory.
A free and independent Britain is a blessing to the world, and our relationship has never been stronger. Both America and Britain understand that governments must be responsive to everyday working people, that governments must represent their own citizens.
There's one thing where Theresa May would definitely be happy. After having so many talks with EU leaders, Trump probably is the only world leader who told good things about Brexit. Let's listen.
I think Brexit's going to be a wonderful thing for your country. I think when it irons out, you're going to have your own identity, and you're going to have the people that you want in your country, and you're going to be able to make free trade deals without having somebody watching you and what you're doing.
Meanwhile, François Hollande and Angela Merkel are calling for European unity. They met in Berlin with the new Trump administration and Brexit high on the agenda. Isa Suarez joins me now from London. And tell us more about this sign of unity, a message. What did they say? Message of unity, Robin, a message of solidarity. Both leaders we saw today standing defiant, standing strong. They were the face of Europe. And they had two messages, really. They talked of external and internal conflicts the world is facing. And it's the external ones that really points the finger more at US President Donald Trump. They said basically that what we've heard in the last few weeks from world leaders is that they're very much worried, in particular Merkel and Hollande, worried about the rhetoric they're hearing from US President, which has led to a bit of fury and fear here in Europe. We know what his thoughts are on NATO, calling it obsolete. We also know how he views Chancellor Merkel's policies when it comes to immigration, and pretty much blaming her, saying that Europe, the EU as the continent as a whole, is really a vehicle for just Germany. But it was Mr. Hollande, Francois Hollande of France, who had this message for the US president. Take a listen.
Challenges posed by the new US administration in regards to commercial rules, in regards to the conflicts in the world. We, of course, have to speak to Donald Trump, since he was chosen by the Americans to be their president. But we have to do it with a European point of view and our interests and values.
Eurozone finance ministers meeting in Belgium's capital Brussels have described US President Donald Trump as a risk to the 19-country monetary union. The ministers have strongly rejected the claim by Trump's likely incoming ambassador to the EU, Ted Malloch, that the euro currency could collapse within the next 18 months.
President Trump continues to use executive actions to initiate quick changes to Obama administration policies. The commander-in-chief was at the Pentagon a short time ago.
Trump was met on the front steps of the Pentagon by his defense secretary, James Mattis, the former Marine general who will be leading the war effort against ISIS. During his meeting with the Joint Chiefs, Trump discussed with the heads of the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines and National Guard how to accelerate the fight against ISIS. Trump said during the campaign he would give the military 30 days to deliver recommendations for defeating ISIS. President Trump signed two executive orders here at the Pentagon, one focused on military readiness, increasing the size of the military, and updating the nuclear arsenal. The other concerns extreme vetting of those applying for visas and halts all refugee admission and resettlement for Syrians for 120 days or until further notice. The overall number of refugees welcomed into the United States will be cut in half. Priority will be given to Christians who say they were persecuted.
Persecuted Christians, we've talked about this overseas. Right. The refugee program that, or the refugee changes you're looking to make, as it relates to persecuted Christians, do you see them as kind of a priority here?
Yes.
You do?
Yes, they've been horribly treated. Do you know, if you were a Christian in Syria, it was impossible, at least very tough to get into the United States. If you were a Muslim, you could come in. But if you were a Christian, it was almost impossible. And the reason that was so unfair is that everybody was persecuted, in all fairness, but they were chopping off the heads of everybody, but more so the Christians. And I thought it was very unfair. So we are going to help them.
Following his statements on potential cooperation between Russia and the United States in the fight against ISIS, President Trump is now prepared to have his first phone call with President Putin on Saturday.
This indeed is a very long anticipated phone call. The last time the two leaders spoke was back in November by a traditional congratulatory phone call after Trump has won the presidency. This time, though, the pair really is expected to get down to business. But will this be a significant step towards better ties between the U.S. and Russia? Well, that remains to be seen, and there really are no guarantees at all, despite the narrative that many of the major media outlets they have been pursuing over the past few months, describing the so-called bromance between the two, and even went as far as labeling Trump as Putin's puppet. Here.
He's so devoted to Putin.
Gushing again over Vladimir Putin.
He's what the Russians call a useful idiot.
Basically a Russian asset.
Russia. Donald Trump.
Vladimir Putin.
Vladimir, I'm sorry, but I didn't know you were coming, so I do not have a gift for you.
Please, Mr. Trump, you are the gift.
Let's not forget the people that Trump has chosen for leading roles in his administration, from the head of the Pentagon to the Secretary of State, while they remain skeptical of Russia as well.
I would consider the principal threats to start with Russia.
Russia today poses a danger.
Russia has reasserted itself aggressively.
And here in Russia, authorities are not pinning too much hope on the new administration either. We've heard many times from the Russian government and the foreign ministry saying that they remain cautious to see what the new administration has to offer and on whether Trump will deliver on his promise to cooperate with Russia on the fight against terrorism.
Americans are undoubtedly divided on their support for President Donald Trump, but what do Russians think of him? According to state-run research center The Moscow Times, among those surveyed, 70% of Russians think Trump will be a competent leader. But many Russians still have questions about the 45th president, so like anyone, they Google it. According to USA Today, in the last week, the top Trump-related query was, who is Donald Trump? Other questions ask who attended the inauguration, who's in his cabinet, and the age of his wife, Melania. Russians also seem to be curious over which celebrities support Trump, a segment of the community he's had a tempestuous relationship with. Here in the U.S., over the past week, the trending questions Americans have are about his youngest son, his executive order to pull out of TPP, and his inauguration.
On Friday, President Trump said he had a friendly phone call with Mexico's president, saying he will renegotiate trade deals and other aspects of the country's ties because Mexico has, quote, beat us to a pulp in the past. On Friday, the presidents spoke over the phone for an hour, a day after Mexico's president Enrique Peña Nieto canceled the planned meeting in Washington, a week after Trump's insistence that Mexico will pay for the multi-billion-dollar border wall. Trump said, "We are going to be working on a fair relationship and a new relationship," also adding that he will make sure Mexico will not outnegotiate him like he has done with other past leaders.
For those that don't have our back, we're taking names. We will make points to respond to that accordingly.
Before presenting her credentials to the United Nations Secretary General Friday, new U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Nikki Haley, put some of our allies on notice. During her informal remarks Friday, Haley seemed eager to make some changes.
Everything that's working, we're going to make it better. Everything that's not working, we're going to try and fix. And anything that seems to be obsolete and not necessary, we're going to do away with.
President Trump has been critical of the Obama administration's UN policy, especially its recent decision to abstain rather than vote no on condemning Israel's settlements in the West Bank.
The way that we'll show value is to show our strength, show our voice, have the backs of our allies, and make sure that our allies have our back as well.
During a confirmation hearing, the South Carolina-born daughter of Indian immigrants said she supports Trump's call to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
New York City's former mayor, Rudy Giuliani, says President Trump will keep his promise to move the U.S. Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem. Giuliani is an advisor to President Donald Trump. He just met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem, and he sat down with CBN News to discuss the embassy issue.
I believe that's something they'll talk about, and that's something that President Trump pledged to do, and I know he keeps his promises, so I can't tell you exactly how he's going to do it or when he's going to do it or in what stages, but I can tell you that he is very serious about the promises that he makes, a little bit different than some other politicians.
We'll go to Venezuela now, and where the government has introduced a new electronic identity card to assist with the country's cash crisis. The card can be used to buy food and other basic needs and should make shopping easier.
It's an electronic identity card. President Nicolas Maduro is calling the Homeland Card. It will regulate access to food and personal care products necessary for everyday use. A ration card for people who are already on government assistance. 50 million people will benefit from this social program. The new ID card has a QR code that will allow people to make purchases electronically to avoid using cash. The opposition leaders has called this measure as a social control. They also say the Venezuelans that will be using this ID card is just the proof that the government is worried the country is running out of cash.
Airport security has a magic ability to either take up all 2 hours of your time prior to departure with insanely slow and long lines, or move you through at inexplicably fast warp speeds, leaving you with hours to waste away at your gate until takeoff. But a new security technology aims to change that. Clear allows travelers to skip the identification lines at security by using fingerprint and iris scans of their eyes to verify their identity almost instantly. That means there's no need to flash your passport or driver's license in line. When paired with TSA PreCheck, which speeds up your actual security screening by allowing you to keep your shoes on and your laptop in your bag, Clear can get you through the entire security process in less than 5 minutes.
Imagine you could make a payment without even having to interact with a credit card. Sounds crazy, right? Well, that's actually possible, and it's all because of an Israeli company called OnTrack Innovations, or OTI.
Yeah, we actually developed a technology that's considered to be unique. It's called the Pay Capsule and the Pay Capsule Flex. And imagine that you actually can convert any product to a payment product. So I will give you a few examples. First one is we are able to put it inside the jacket, inside the collar sleeve of your jacket, and you are able to pay with that. But more than that, you can, for example, open the door of your apartment, open the door of your car, and even start the engine of your car. So this is one example.
Wow.
Second example, that we can put it inside the refillable coffee cup, and you can upload the cup with, let's say, $50, and from now on you can pay with it.
So essentially you could slip this little device into your collar sleeve, right?
Correct.
And then go to a coffee shop and pay for your coffee by just swiping your arm over the device.
Or to just tap the refillable coffee cup in front of the reader.
According to a recent study, the muddying of coastal waters due to climate change may drastically increase levels of neurotoxic mercury in sea life, potentially contaminating world food supplies. Study author Eric Bjorn warns that disruptions in marine ecosystems could shift the balance of microbes at the base of the food web, potentially doubling methylmercury concentrations in zooplankton. Those higher concentrations could easily climb up the food web to fish that are consumed by humans.
Dramatic video showing a hotel in Peru collapsing into a flooded river. The rising water eroding the foundations of the hotel, which had dated back to the colonial era. All of the guests inside getting out before the collapse, and no injuries were reported. Local officials say 10 hours of rain flooded homes in the area and caused several landslides.
A 2-mile-long crack in the ground has been discovered in Arizona's Tater Hills. That's half-mile longer than the similar cracks in the area. They're not exactly mysterious, but they can be dangerous and they can be deep. They're the result of extreme pumping of groundwater in the area. The water is being pumped out before underground aquifers can replenish the supply, and that leads to subsidence with the newly dry ground falling away. Scientists say there are 11 miles of cracks in the area. They have ruined homes and roads, but there's not much that can be done except to watch them carefully.
Columbine-style attack planned on a Florida middle school today, foiled just in time. Well, the Sumter County Sheriff says that the 13 and 14-year-old boys planned to drop a pencil in the school's gym, and that would be a signal to start shooting. And those who knew about the attack allegedly told to wear white and shout Eugene so they would not get shot. Terrified students who heard about the plot alerting police, who found several guns at the boys' homes. They are charged with conspiracy to commit murder.
Australia Day celebrations have been marred by a violent protest organised by a far-left group which ended in clashes with police. The demonstration was led by a radical splinter group from the country's Green Party called Left Renewal, which positions itself as anti-capitalist and anti-police. Murad Gazdiev takes a look at how the far left is adopting some of the more sinister tactics from the other end of the spectrum.
The young woman being beaten bloody here by a gang of anti-fascists, radical liberals, was reportedly attacked merely for wearing the national flag on her bracelet. Let's make something clear. The left, liberals, stand for freedom of speech, for equality, for tolerance, against greed, against corporations. But what do you do when you're confronted with an ideology different to yours by people who believe in immigration control, in borders, and wave national flags? Calmly discuss your differences, hold a peaceful protest, turn the other cheek. Please. The radical left is on the rise. It is increasingly no longer about liberal ideas. It is about shutting down dissenting opinion, by fire if necessary. In Italy, liberal protesters attacked a van, mistakenly believing it was carrying far-right activists. In Germany, leftist youths vandalized an immigration office, saying border controls infringe on human rights. And this is happening all over Europe. But this is not confined to Europe. It is permeating the ranks of the left worldwide. Cue the United States. Try going to a liberal rally in the US and saying you support Trump.
You voted Trump! You voted Trump! Oh, yeah! Yeah, you voted Trump!
Say anything to anybody or just walking out or what?
I was walking out with a Trump sign. They grabbed my Trump sign and started following me, saying I was like a racist and stuff.
There is a sort of irony here. The people who profess to stand for plurality, for freedom of speech, instead do their best to silence opposing views.
The story crosses the partisan divide, and it went viral. A waitress at Busboys and Poets on 14th Street received a $450 tip for a $72 meal. The customer wrote a message of unity. He said if everyone had her smile and her kindness, the country would come together as one people. Here's the twist. It was written by a self-described Trump supporter from Texas, Dr. Jason White. He was visiting D.C. for the inauguration and stopped by for a meal at the popular restaurant.
We really hit it off well. And I know I had a perception of the place where I felt uncomfortable. And she had kind of a perception of that she was about to serve Trump supporters. And we were just in the same boat together. We all have the American spirit, and it's really our duty to make America great ourselves. Not one person, but ourselves. And that's by respecting and loving one another, no matter how much we disagree with them.
As for Rosalind Harris, the server who got the tip, she told us tonight she hopes to thank Dr. White one day for his kindness.